What is the most WTF thing you've experienced seen? During a flight, while waiting to use the water closet on the way to Panama, the door somehow opened while this guy was hunched over the toilet fapping away. There was no mistaking it. This guy looked like a poster boy for the vinegar strokes. At first I couldn't believe what I actually saw. As he turned his head to see the door come open, the most awkward eye contact moment of my life unfolded. He turned to shut the door in a panicked fashion, exposing his junk. At that point my WTF face became encrusted into my facial features for the rest of the flight and even the next day. So, since that time I can hardly use any bathroom on a plane. I'd rather just hold it in than see another B party. With a bit of luck, his life was ruined forever. Always thinking that just behind some narrow door in all of his favorite airlines, men in red woolen shirts are getting incredible kicks from things you'll never know. I was taking a business flight to Chicago when about halfway through the flight a man was walking back to the lavatory but completely passed out and hit the floor next to me. I was in a hallway seat. People started chattering and calling for help while this guy pops out of first class and says, "Don't worry, I'm a doctor," and assesses the situation like a boss. It was Dr. Oz. Imagine how terrifying it would be if you needed medical help and Dr. Phil pops out of first class. On the way to Japan I look across aisle and see an old man sitting with an old woman I assume to be his wife. He reaches into his bag and brings out a large stash of PMags and proceeds to sit and look at them for many hours of the flight. Maybe he just reads the articles. Not really during a flight, but close. Welps. I was a former aircraft cleaner. We cleaned when the passengers got off the flight and had to finish before the next round of passengers got on. Usually a turn time of 5-8 minutes to clean a 717 or 737. Anywho, as you can imagine, I've not only seen nightmares, I was the guy who had to confront them. Yes, I remember it well. A flight had just landed and I waited in the jet bridge for the passengers to exit the plane. As soon as the last passenger got off, I went on to do my thing. Suddenly, a flight attendant comes running down the aisle screaming at me that someone obliterated one of the back bathrooms. At first I was a bit cautious. After all, the flight attendant's definition of a mess varies greatly with what us cleaners would consider a mess. So I go into the bathroom, and my god, someone took a liquidy mashed potatoes and gravy, without the mashed potatoes, dump in the trash can. Now, I'm not sure if you know the size of a trash can opening on a 717, but it's barely enough to fit your hand in it. It also has a push open door. Yay. Checking my watch, I only had 6 minutes to clean the bathroom and the entire cabin, equipped with 2 bags, 2 pair of disposable gloves and a small bottle of air freshener. Game time. I told the civilians to stand back. The entire crew stared at me, including the front deck and gate agents. I slapped my gloves on, flared my bag out, and gave them the look. Then stepped inside the small bathroom and shut the door behind me. I wish I could tell you that I fought the good fight, and the bathroom let me be. I wish I could tell you that, but aircraft cleaning is no fairy tale world. Needless to say, the task had been completed with half a minute or so to spare with the passengers getting ready to board. There were no thank you house. I expect none. It is my job after all. And none of the passengers suspected a thing. I got off the flight just as they were coming down the jet bridge, saving them the hassle of a ground delay which would have caused a domino effect. Indeed, these things we do, so that others may fly. TLDR. I cleaned planes and had to clean up a liquid poop in a trash can to save the lives of hundreds, if not thousands of people. I'm great. My hero. I was flying Calgary to Houston, which is about a 4-hour direct flight. We were just about 2 hours into the flight, or coincidentally just about to Denver, when the pilot announced we would have to turn around back to Calgary. So around we go and land in about an hour 15. He really cranked on it. We touched down and taxi over to the mechanics. They opened the cargo door and shut it again, and in 15 more minutes we were fueled up and in the air and off to Houston. This time it was about a 3-hour flight, full thrust the whole way. Luckily there was an industry guy behind me, and I overheard him speculating the reason. His idea was that since the airline had paid mechanics in Calgary, and probably not in Denver, It would be cheaper for them to turn around all the way to Calgary than pay all the costs associated with landing in Denver. Luckily it was just a little glitch and not a true problem, but it was anyone's guess the true issue. I have a friend that is very familiar with the inner workings of the plane, and he said that anytime they open the cargo door and unplug a certain cable during maintenance, some switch has to be flipped to reset that alarm system for that door. He said it's an extremely common mistake for that switch not getting flipped after work has been done, and it results in false alarms. All that cost, likely in the tens of thousands, because one guy forgot to flip the switch. You must work an energy. On a flight a few weeks ago, the flight attendants started to make preparations for landing, telling people to put their trays up and whatnot. I noticed the flight attendant loudly speaking to a man in his late 20s or early 30s sitting 2 rows in front of me. "Sir, you need to put your seat back up, sir." So the guy starts spitting blood and convulsing. It sounded like he was choking on the blood with each gasp of air. Flight attendants start screaming for help and they make an announcement over the PA for a doctor. 4 passengers and all flight attendants leap into action. Turns out the lady in the row between me and the sick man is a nurse. Together they get him laid out on the row with his head in the aisle. He's not responding to their questions and he's fading in and out of consciousness. We make an emergency landing, 20 minutes ahead of schedule. As we are taxiing, he regains consciousness and tells the flight attendant holding his head that he's sorry for the trouble. We land. Paramedics meet the plane and carry him off. He seemed to be stable, but I hope everything worked out for the guy. TLDR. Guy sitting 2 rows ahead of me probably had a seizure and started choking on his blood. Flight attendants and a nurse in the seat behind him saved his life. Emergency landing and everyone made their connecting flights. Phew, you had me worried there for a minute. I wasn't there for it, but this happened to my cousin. He was flying in South America, and about halfway through the flight he realizes he really needs to take a pee. The plane he is on is a tiny prop plane made for tiny people. He is 6 feet 5 inches. He awkwardly climbs over his aislamates and shuffles to the back of the plane. As he is closing the door, the captain comes on the loudspeaker and warns of upcoming turbulence. He thinks, "Frick it, I really need to pee." He crams himself into this tiny bathroom, manages to whip it out, and right as he starts to pee they hit a huge bit of turbulence that knocks him off his feet, backwards, through the bathroom door, and flat on his back, in the aisle, still peeing straight up in the air. He was completely mortified and managed to get back up, pick up the door and work himself back into the bathroom. He waited for like 20 minutes hoping no one would have seen it, forgotten about it by then. But when he went back out to take his seat he got a standing ovation from every single person on the plane. Ouch. Awesome mental image. I'm giggled in my meeting. I was sitting on a B747, British Airways. We were taking off from Heathrow Airport. Just left the ground and I saw this black thing flapping against the wing. I thought, dang, must have got a bird or something. Black thing continues to slap and seemingly get bigger. It was a long piece of rubber, some sort of lining, seal, or something, and then it simply just ripped off and ended up in some lucky kid's backyard. How's that for good maintenance? I had to get a separate seat from my parents when I was 15. I was watching pre-downloaded YouTube videos on my iPod when some 30-year-old next to me decided to show me a video of his GF giving him a BJ. It was a horrible video. Sure that's illegal. I used to internationally travel a lot when I was younger and working for a telecom company designing new infrastructure. On one of the trips as we were heading to China, I looked out the window. We were above Alaska and the Bering Strait somewhere, and the horizon had a huge slice of black, like some weird wedge-shaped cloud that encompassed half the horizon. It was a bright day on the ground or sea below us. The ice was very bright and white, but there was this giant dark wedge encompassing and seeming to take over the earth as you looked out to the horizon. I had the guys next to me look out and take a look. They were confused at first too. I was really confused for a few minutes. Then I realized what I was looking at in profile and what that engulfing black wedge really was. It was night. We were flying in such a manner that we were surfing the edge of daytime and nighttime at 35,000 plus featuring, and at that moment if you looked out over the horizon you saw daytime fading into night. I only saw that once. It was being in the right place at the right time. I have a picture somewhere I may be able to dig up. Aside from bad in-flight movies, that would be my most WTF experience. Alright ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We're right on time for our landing in Chicago. We'll be making this flight at 50,000 miles per hour, flying at 500 feet. I will treasure that mental image forever. The bathroom sink on a Bangladeshi Airlines flight from Thailand to Nepal was clogged and had about 1,000 water bugs living in it. On a flight from Cochin to Delhi, I had a row to myself when a man sat next to me and basically forced me to eat some of the cashews he had brought with him in this gigantic plastic bag, despite my attempts at politely declining. He then ran into the bathroom and did not come out again, even after we landed. I was on a plane that lost power just as it was throttling up for takeoff. And I don't mean they reduced power to the engines, I mean all the lights went out, the engines shut down, and we were left sitting on the runway for a good few minutes. Somehow the plane regained power and we taxied to an adjacent tarmac for another few minutes. After this, the pilot announces to the passengers that they had a small technical glitch and that we are now ready for takeoff. The rest of the ride was uneventful. The rest of the ride was utterly terrifying. Fix this for you. Baby, please don't go. I boarded a plane going from San Francisco to Philadelphia and remember seeing a pregnant woman take her seat only a few aisles behind mine. I got settled and before the plane took off, the woman was breathing very heavily and looked extremely nervous. She was traveling alone, which made me a bit concerned, but people get nervous all the time before plane rides. I shrugged it off and not long after I finished my cup of tea, I fell into a deep sleep. About 3 hours into the 5.5 hour flight, I got woken up by a strong urge to urinate, likely from the diuretic properties of the tea I had consumed only hours prior. I quietly made my way to the lavatory at the very rear of the plane, carefully dodging rogue appendages and nearly tripping over someone's runaway foot like I was in some gladiator's gauntlet. Freaking sprawlers, I remember thinking to myself. Finally making it to salvation, I quickly slide open the lavatory door in anticipation. All I remember after this was being overcome by the sensation of sheer horror. The few things I can recall, blood was everywhere. By everywhere, I mean the floor, the toilet seat, the sink, the mirror, everywhere. It looked like someone had carried out an exorcism. The stench was just god-awful. Imagine throwing poo, pee, and blood into a blender, blending it, and splattering it all over your room. That's what it smelled like. The dead baby, no big deal, all good. Wait, what? A freaking dead baby. I immediately notified the stewardesses, who were just as mortified as I was upon seeing the grisly scene. After further inspection, it became clear that the lady I mentioned previously had a silent miscarriage in the lavatory and somehow managed to hide it from everyone on the plane. Irresponsible, but impressive. After the pilots were notified, they made an emergency landing in Cleveland, Ohio, where men in biohazard bunny suits stormed the plane and disposed of the dead baby. The lady was escorted off the plane and whisked to the nearest hospital. Of all the people on that flight, why me? Foo-woo. To this day, all dead baby jokes play out in my head as if they took place on an airplane. TLDR. Woman had miscarriage on my flight, causing us to emergency land in the plane to get decontaminated by men in Intel bunny suits. Flying Seattle to Vegas. A black lady wearing a bizarre Playboy pink sweatsuit sits in front of us. She immediately starts talking non-stop to the business people next to her. She tries 5 times, before the plane even leaves the gate, to order drinks. The stewardess has pretty much had it with her already. We get in the air and she starts ordering vodka non-stop and gets overly friendly with the poor people sitting next to her. The stewardess eventually cuts her off and the lady goes berserk. She's screaming, "You bit fat white bee, I'm being discriminated," etc. She was arrested when we landed, which I think is extreme, but it was amusing. My dad flies quite regularly on business and he'll tell you they don't pee about when it comes to trouble on planes. He had a mate who was arrested for telling the security people he didn't have a bomb on him. I was on a flight home from South Africa after a family vacation. My dad is a diabetic, but he usually keeps his blood sugar levels pretty regulated, so I never worried before. Mid-flight, I wake up from a nap and see him slumped over the side of his seat. He was taken to the back of the plane, where 3 doctors were examining him. They said his heartbeat went up to 220 or something, which I think means he was an inch from death. All I remember is seeing my mom and brother break down. I began having flashes of life without my father, and it overwhelmed me. I felt sick to my stomach, imagining what life would be like when all of a sudden his heart rate stabilized. The doctors on board said it was a miracle, and I felt so much relief. The plane had to stop in Senegal, where my dad was transferred to a hospital. He wanted me to keep going, since the semester was starting soon. That flight home alone was terrible. I felt the other passengers watching me the entire time. He is alright now, but every time I get on a plane I always remember that feeling of leaving the whole world behind. I was on a flight from Amsterdam to NY one time and there was a kid who was running up and down the aisles trying to bite people. As he was heading down the aisle at full speed, a stewardess suddenly pulled the refreshments cart into the aisle right in front of it and he ran smack into it face first. She said to him, "Oh, sorry, didn't see you coming. You shouldn't run like that down the aisle," or something like that. I know she did that on purpose. It was awesome. Not on a plane, but in the security line. About 6 years back, while about 10 people in front of my family in the line, a guy runs past the metal detector. It goes off. He doesn't stop. I couldn't tell what one of the security men yelled, but he yelled it 3 times. Instead of stopping the guy, all the guards and people behind the desks run into 2 rooms and close the doors, leaving all us passengers standing there freaking the frick out. A minute or 2 pass. A ding goes over the PA system. Everyone comes out of the rooms. PA system says thanks for being cooperative during our drill, and have a nice day. TLDR. Apparently the drill is to leave all the passengers to die while the staff remain safe at airport check-ins. I had an engine fail in a massive explosion. Of course we landed easily with the remaining engine. I think your story is more traumatizing. Not on a plane but a train. There was a guy and a woman sat with a blanket over the women's lap. The man's left hand was under the blanket fidgeting around and the woman with her face in her hands. The man's right hand meanwhile was holding a Snicker bar he was trying to open with his teeth and was reading the sports section of a newspaper that was on the table in front of him. True stories, that is a boss. I woke up to a thunderstorm outside with purple lightning bolt. This is your captain speaking. We're about to get into a little bit of turbulence. Also, I'm gonna need you to come in on Saturday. Yeah. I went to Vegas with my wife. First let me say it was an early flight. We got there extra early for check-in, put our bags to the side so as not to get in anyone's way. This 300 plus lb greaseball wearing a Hawaiian shirt and shorts comes waddling in with one carry-on bag. Remember this, it's important, and knocks over my neatly stacked out of the way baggage. It's also 15 degrees outside, freezing, and 5:14 AM. I am like whatever, no big deal. Later we get on the plane. My wife has the window. I am in the middle and here comes too fat for the seat Hawaiian guy with his little bag to sit on the end next to me. Frick, let me tell you something. This guy smelled like a dead animal covered in throw up and crap. I literally dry heaved when he sat down next to me. The guy had a carry-on bag that he was clenching like it contained something of utmost importance. Obviously not deodorant. And he was sweating through his thin red flowered shirt while everyone else was bundled in heavy winter jackets. We had not even taken off yet and I was becoming violently ill smelling this guy. I had to stuff my face in my sweater and throw my head in my wife's lap to try and escape the smell. That's right, I was inhaling my wife's tea odor over this guy as a source of oxygen. After an hour the guy became increasingly fidgety and paranoid. This made him sweat more. I can't figure out how a guy who sweated so much was so fat. He was like a walking sauna of used banana hammocks. Finally the guy got up to use the bathroom and as soon as he closed the bathroom door people began ripping cologne and perfume ads out of magazines and rubbing them on his sweat-soaked chair. I crap you not. People were offering their apologies to me for having to sit next to him and then the stewardess comes over and says I am sorry the flight is booked, there's nowhere else to put him, and I am staring at her like what, I never even said anything to anyone about it. That's when I realized this guy was such a freaking disgusting mess. People were actually rallying around me to try and help me. It was the weirdest moment of my life. For the next 5 hours he made about 20 more trips to the bathroom, and each time different Rose would come over to rub his seat down with cologne. Oh, and you know what was in the bag? Pee. Piles of pee. He took a new magazine to the bathroom with him each time. I have not been on a plane since. TLDR. The world's most disgusting frick sat next to me on a 6-hour plane trip, and people rubbed cologne and perfume ads on his seat when he went to the bathroom. His smell was so bad. He masturbated to a bag of pee he brought with him. The entire airplane wanted to help me. I was on a flight to Chicago, was supposed to land at O'Hare, but about 30 minutes before landing they told us it was too icy and we were being diverted to Midway. Midway and O'Hare are 26 miles apart. So we land at Midway, we disembark, and as we are leaving the Skyway, a gate agent runs up and tells us we need to get back on the plane. They were now going to take it to O'Hare. We all said frick it, we'll stay here. She then informed us our bags wouldn't be getting unloaded. We would need to go to the other airport to get them. So about 5 of us, out of a full flight 90, got back on and had to wait about 20 minutes to de-ice the plane. Then a 15-minute flight to O'Hare. TLDR. Saw a creature on the wing, throwing explosives in the engine. Attacked me. Totally freaked out. Dan Aykroyd drove me to the hospital. Upvote for TLDR of the day. Kinda WTF. Kinda annoying, but the call button above the seat behind me shorted out with 1.5 hours left in a flight. Ding, 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 for about an hour and a half. It was very, very annoying. Not really WTF, but when I was a flight attendant I saw some pretty awesome fireworks displays from the sky every the 4th of July. Amazing. Not mine but my sister's. She was once on a long-haul flight from London to Hong Kong. During the night while everyone was sleeping, suddenly a woman let out the most blood-curdling scream. Since this was not that long after 9/11, everyone was pretty on edge as it was. It turned out that the woman had just had a bad dream. Everyone was pretty annoyed after that. I was in a Black Hawk helicopter and we were all kinda dozed off sleeping when suddenly the helicopter took a dive. When that happens you float up but you're strapped in. Feels very weird. My male friend sitting next to me grabs my hand and is screaming. After 10 seconds it finally levels out. The pilots never mentioned it afterwards, so I think they might have been messing with us. It was really scary. One of those moments where you think, that's it, I'm dead. We used to do crap like that in a car as a prank. If you were the DD after a party and everyone was passed out in the backseat, you'd casually slam on the brakes and scream as loud as you could. Good times, haha. I once took one of those crappy little prop planes from St. Louis to NY. I don't remember what airline it was. I just wasn't pleased. It's winter time. We hit a storm we can't go around, so we decide to go through it. Plane was, thankfully, not full as it was shortly post 9/11 and nobody wanted to fly. So we enter the clouds. Crap gets dark fast. Plane starts to shudder from turbulent winds. I'm having a freaking ball because I have no fear of flying despite the fact everyone else is terrified shitless. And then we hit the real storm. The plane drops. Not sure how much since we're directly in the clouds and the pilots are pretty clearly trying to find an empty spot. I guess our plane couldn't go above the clouds. Not powerful enough or something. So we drop again. And again. And every freaking overhead bin pops open. People start screaming. The stewardesses won't leave their seats. Luggage is doing the Humpty in the aisle. And this little kid who is about 8 or 9 is doing the wave every time the plane dips. I do the wave with him. Plane survives trip. I give him a high five on the way out. Me and my friend being the only Americans on a Ryanair flight otherwise filled with Italians from Paris to Rome. Holy effing crap. I knew Italians had a lot of let's say culture. But this was pure insanity. So getting on the plane everyone is pushing and shoving, there is no semblance of a line but more of writhing blob pushing and shoving to get on the plane. So we're on the plane and everyone is pretty loud. Up to this point nothing weird. So we start to take off and everyone around me is holding on to dear life. Praying. Hugging the seat in front of them. Still loud as heck though. So, we get up in the air and as soon as the fasten seatbelt sign turns off, the plane turns into what I can only describe as a flying Mexican flea market. I mean everyone is up and walking around and talking and yelling. Towards the end of the flight we had some turbulence. Everyone sat down and started screaming and the girls started crying. Then when we go to land, the same theatrics as we had taking off, except when we land everyone starts clapping and cheering. To top it all off, when I got off the plane no one was at customs or security. I mean no one, so we walked right through. TLDR, Italians are insane. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.